What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video I'm going to be going through my top 12 2024 quarterback rankings. I've already gone through my top 20 running backs and wide receivers. Now we're pivoting over to the quarterback spot. I really do feel like the QB position is in a great spot for fantasy football. You have your high upside guys. If you want to get one of those dudes in the first 3, 4, 5 rounds, I think you're going to be in a great spot there. If you want to wait, I think there's a ton of depth at the position. If you're going to wait to like back end QB1s, I think you can end up leaving your draft with 2 solid options that you could, kind of flip flop week after week. So I'm going to be splitting these quarterbacks up into tiers. And I will say, like, my personal philosophy is that I'm shooting for upside at the quarterback position. So if I'm going to be drafting a dude somewhat early, I want them to have a very high peak ceiling. If they're not going to have that upside, I'd rather just wait and get, a Kirk Cousins way late in the draft, and Aaron Rodgers, get 2 of those guys where you can kind of just flip-flop them week after week. So early on, shooting for that upside, and that's where we're going to start here in Tier 1 with Josh Allen as my quarterback 1. He's finished as the quarterback 1 in points per game in 3 of his last 4 seasons. He blends the passing and rushing production, I think, better than any other fantasy quarterback. He's thrown for at least 4,300 yards in 4 straight seasons, 29 plus passing touchdowns in those 4 years. He's rushed for over 500 yards in 5 of his last 6 seasons, or 5 of his 6 total seasons. And then there have been some, significant changes with his weapons. Stephon Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. You have Keon Coleman coming in, Curtis Samuel. So I think probably, a net decrease in terms of his weapons, unless Keon Coleman comes in and just, balls out from day one here. But I still think he should be ranked here as the QB1. He's going to give you that passing production. He had a dominant season on the ground last year, especially getting into the end zone. So I like Josh Allen here as my top quarterback option. And then my other Tier 1 quarterback is going to be Jalen Hurts. Since he's become the full-time starter, he's finished as the quarterback 6, quarterback 1, and quarterback 2 in points per game. He has 600-plus rushing yards in 3 straight seasons. He has 38 rushing touchdowns over that stretch and 28 rushing touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. He has all his top weapons back: A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and now you also add Saquon to the mix. So I like Hurts here as my QB2. Now shifting into my second tier, we're going to start off with Lamar Jackson. He was the QB3 in points per game last season. He's been a top 8 quarterback in points per game in all 5 of his seasons as a starter. So he's really not slipping past like that mid-tier QB1 area. And one kind of notable thing here is that Lamar Jackson in the last couple of years had started to bulk up. He got bigger, and we saw his rushing production start to dip, but we didn't really see much increase in him like getting used on the goal line, getting into the end zone. So he actually went out and lost weight this offseason. So maybe we see his rushing production kind of shift back to what we saw in 2019, 2020, where he was just running all over everyone, 1,000+ rushing yards a season. We might get that back, which really could unlock like his crazy upside that we've seen in previous years. And then also in Tier 2, going with Patrick Mahomes, he's coming off a down fantasy season, at least, for his standards, quarterback 10 in points per game. But this was just a rare season where this Chiefs offense was not top tier. They were 14th in total points. From 2018 to 2022, they never finished worse than 6th in points. So like I said, just a down year. He has a much better group of weapons heading into 2024. They signed Marquise Brown in free agency. They added Xavier Worthy in the draft. Hopefully Rashee Rice gets his stuff together and doesn't get a massive suspension, but who knows how that's going to shake out. You still have Travis Kelce at tight end, so a solid group of weapons here. Mahomes has shown that he can be a high-end QB1 and also just is a pretty safe option, especially when you're giving him weapons to work with here. And then my final Tier 2 quarterback is going to be Anthony Richardson. I'm very high on Richardson heading into 2024. We only saw 4 games out of him in 2023, and he left before halftime in 2 of those, but in his 2 full games, he put up 20.9 and 29.6 fantasy points. I think it's fair to say he is the best athlete to ever play the quarterback position. He has elite rushing upside. He's paired with a great offensive-minded head coach in Shane Steichen, solid weapons with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell. So I'm all in here. He pretty much checks every box. I think he's going to have the passing production. I think he's going to give you solid work on the ground. I think in general, this offense is going to be good, which is going to lead to a lot of touchdown opportunities. So I do really like Anthony Richardson here heading into his second NFL season. Now pivoting into Tier 3, I'm probably going to be higher than most on Kyler Murray. I'm very in on him this season, and I've been pretty high on Kyler Murray in previous years and then also in Dynasty. I think in a couple days I'm going to put out a video with some Dynasty trade targets. He's probably going to be in there. He was the quarterback 9 in points per game last season, coming off a torn ACL. So a big part of Kyler Murray's fantasy upside is his rushing production. That was obviously capped coming off the ACL, but he still gave you a top 10 season. His worst fantasy season was quarterback 11, and that was him as a rookie. I think it's reasonable to expect him to increase his rushing production second year off the ACL. He gets a massive offensive addition with Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in. Trey McBride was an absolute monster over the second half of the season, so I think he's going to have a really strong wide receiver 1. I think he's going to have probably one of the best receiving tight ends in the NFL, maybe a top 3 option. So I like the weapons he has around him. I like the rushing upside. He's been fairly consistent, so very in on Kyler here as my quarterback 6. Then behind Kyler, we're going with CJ Stroud, and I feel like most people are probably going to have Stroud ahead of Kyler Murray. This is where my ceiling conversation kind of comes in here, and I just think Kyler has the higher upside with the rushing. But for CJ Stroud here, coming off a great rookie season, the quarterback 8 in points per game, has a stacked group of weapons heading into this year. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Schultz. The only thing kind of holding him back here is I think his upside is capped with the lack of rushing production. Rushed for 167 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2023. With new weapons coming in, I don't know why that would increase, but I think he's going to come in. I think he's going to put up dominant passing numbers, and I do think he takes a step forward after his rookie season and outproduces what he did last year. And then my final tier 3 quarterback is going to be Joe Burrow. He's coming off a very, very tough 2023. He played through a calf injury early on, was pretty brutal playing through that, especially fantasy-wise. Then his season came to an end early with a wrist injury. But Joe Burrow was coming off a QB4 finish in points per game the previous season in 2022. He still has Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is still there. Probably will have him throughout the season, so the weapons are still in position. He gives you some level of rushing production, like he's obviously not a Josh Allen, Lamar, or Jalen Hurts type guy, but he can give you 300 plus rushing yards, a few rushing touchdowns, so he's in that second tier where he can still give you something. I don't think he has like the nuclear upside of some of the guys ahead of him, but that's why he's going to be here in tier 3. And then shifting into tier 4, we're going to start off with Jordan Love. He's the quarterback 5 in points per game at 18.8. He has a very young core around him. I think pretty much everyone on this offense should still be improving, probably with the exception of Josh Jacobs here, because you have Love going into his second year as the starter. You have Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs heading into year 3. You have Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Musgrave, Kraft all heading into year 2. And then you also have Marshawn Lloyd coming in here as a rookie. I do think he's another one of these dudes that has capped rushing upside, but I think he's a nice pick to be, a back-end QB1 option. Then we're going to go with Dak Prescott as my other tier 4 option. The quarterback 4 in points per game last year. Another dude who doesn't really have that top rushing upside, but he is coming off just a super impressive passing season. Over 4,500 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, and he did that really without like a stacked group of weapons. Outside of like CeeDee Lamb, there really wasn't a ton going on there for the Cowboys. I think Dak's just a really nice back-end QB1 pick. Another season without like a nuclear group of weapons, but I think he's a fine option here as a top 10 fantasy guy. And then shifting into tier 5, I kind of cheated here and listed 3 different players, so I guess we're going 13 deep. The first one's Caleb Williams, and I expect Caleb to produce from year 1. He has a great group of weapons: DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. And I also think he can give you some rushing upside. He's not going to have, a crazy number of rushing yards, but he scored a ton of touchdowns with his legs in college, and he can, put up some big plays with his feet. So I think he has that, nice combined upside heading into a great situation in year 1. So if you don't want to pick a rookie here, there are certainly more proven options you can go with. I think if you're picking back end here in the QB1s, you could go a Caleb Williams plus a Kirk Cousins, plus an Aaron Rodgers, just to kind of give yourself 2 different options to go with week to week. But after Caleb Williams, we're actually going to be going with another rookie. It's going to be Jane Daniels. And Daniels has a much worse landing spot, but I think he's going to have that nuclear rushing upside right from day 1. 700 plus rushing yards in 2021 and 2022, over 1,100 in 2023. And I think we learned from a guy like Justin Fields where you don't have to play at a super high level in terms of like a real life perspective to be a nice fantasy option, right? Like Fields wasn't a top tier quarterback when he was just running through defenses, giving you great fantasy production. I think even in a not great situation, maybe he struggles early on, I still think he can be delivering you some nice fantasy games. And then the final guy in this tier, my quarterback 13, I guess, definitely more of a limited upside player, but someone who's probably a little bit safer, pretty reliable week to week. It's going to be Brock Purdy here. He was the quarterback 7 in points per game last year. That was his first full season as the starter. He obviously has a ton of top weapons to work with here with Debo, Ayuk, CMC, Kittle, adding in Ricky Pearsall. So I think Brock Purdy's in that tier of quarterback where if you're drafting him as the quarterback 10, quarterback 11, quarterback 12, somewhere in that range, you can take a shot on a higher upside player, someone like Jane Daniels, Caleb Williams, and have 2 solid options to play. So that's going to be my top 12/13 QB rankings. Let me know your thoughts down below. Which guys are you higher on, lower on? What kind of pocket of the quarterback position or pocket of the draft are you trying to attack? Do you want to go after those early round guys, the Josh Allens, the Jalen Hurts? Would you rather wait, get some middle round guys, or are you just waiting all the way, fading the position until you have a Brock Purdy option available? So let me know down below. I'll have my tight ends out tomorrow. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.